Cageside with Jon Morgan.
And welcome back. Another episode of Cageside with Jon Morgan. I'm your host, Eric McMahon. UFC 295 in the books. And if you were looking for a lot of long fights, you bought the wrong pay-per-view. Alex Pereira becomes a two-division world champion, and he is the fastest in the UFC to ever do it. May have been a little bit of controversy with the early stoppage. Mark Goddard is at the center of that again. I don't know. We'll get into it. Tom Aspinall stands toe-to-toe with the knockout machine, and he comes away with the first round TKO victory. To help me break it down, the guy, he was in attendance because he was all over my television set, right behind the B-side, covering up the blue hoodie with a gray sweatshirt. Let's talk to him. Follow him on Twitter, Jon Morgan _MMA. His name is Jon Morgan. What's up, brother?
Yeah, let me just apologize off the top for anybody that was looking for the blue shirt. The blue shirt was there. It was cold in there in Madison Square Garden for some reason. So I had the hoodie on top to stay warm. But man, yeah, short fights all night long, but exciting fights. Like you said, if you were looking for long fights, you bought the wrong pay-per-view. But I can't imagine anybody bought that pay-per-view, walked away saying, man, it was short on entertainment value for you, man. That was a great card, man. That was a great card.
There was tons of entertainment value. I mean, bang for you buck, you got it. But I got to start by asking, what was it like when 45, Kid Rock, Tucker, and Dana made the walk? It looked insane on television.
It is wild, man. I cannot explain to you. I've been able to experience that a couple times, at least with Dana and Trump and Kid Rock walking in. They've done it a couple times, in Madison Square Garden, in Florida as well. I don't care who's fighting on the card. That is always the biggest moment of the night. The crowd comes alive. They go crazy for it. All the journalists and stuff that are sitting next to me, everybody's clamoring to get their phones and their cameras out to take pictures of it and stuff. It's pretty wild. And they give Donald Trump his own walk-in music. They play the Kid Rock American Badass. He gets his own walk-in music. It's pretty wild to see.
Yeah, I mean, it looked wild on TV. It looked like it like that card, that MSG card didn't need any more added adrenaline, but it seemed like it added more adrenaline into that. And something I do want to touch on is that in Madison Square Garden, we already talked about like when there are fights in MSG, it's a big deal. And here's a stat that is not shocking, but amazing. UFC now holds the 3 top gates at Madison Square Garden. This pay-per-view being number 2, only behind Conor and Eddie, but over almost $13 million gate. And for a historic arena like MSG, for them to hold the top 3 is absolutely amazing.
It's incredible. And look, these statistics are coming from the UFC, so if there are some issues with them, I apologize. But I mean, I don't think they're going to put out fake numbers, but they're the ones reporting it. But according to their numbers, it even includes non-sports event, which is crazy. So now you're talking about, any concerts or comedy tours or whatever big events have come through there as well. They hold the top 3 gates in history of the Madison Square Garden, which, as you said, the world's most famous arena, the iconic place that it is, but the history that's been there for them to hold the top 3 spots, especially when you consider how long they were banned from even being in New York. They couldn't even do New York. You know what I mean? And now they're the top 3 in history. It's crazy.
Okay, I'm glad you brought up being banned in New York because I watched the full post-fight presser, and I believe you said something, or maybe it was another journalist, is like saying, now that you have the top 3, is that kind of like a big middle finger to all those in New York who held you out? And he's like, well, it was actually something of a a food and caterers union in Nevada that was like had some corruption behind it. I didn't know any of that. I mean, I knew that people were holding them out, but I didn't know anything about a union in Nevada. Do you?
The ties run deep. I mean, you could do a couple hours just talking about this, but yeah, the culinary union, and basically it boils down to the fact that in Las Vegas, Station Casinos owned by the Fertitta brothers is a non-union property, or all their properties, I should say. They have multiple properties. And so because of that, the culinary union was always kind of going after them. Well, if they can't really get the headlines that they need and the attention that they need going after the Station Casinos property, well, how about we go after the UFC and we do some things here? And so there were some backhanded things going on with unions and governments and politicians. And I mean, listen, it got to a point where there just was no reason for the UFC not to be legal in New York anymore, except that there were these journalists, there were these politicians behind the scenes that were like, basically just plotting against them and working with each other to keep them out of the state. And finally they got through.
Some kickbacks.
A couple of bucks may have flown, here and there, just a little. So I hear things like that happen. I don't know, but yeah. So it kept it out for years. They finally got through with UFC 205. Of course, that was the epic performance with Conor McGregor and Eddie Alvarez. That incredible night, those iconic scenes of a belt over each shoulder, and now it's become annually one of the biggest events for the UFC.
Yeah, and it was amazing. Let's start at the top. Alex Pereira, second round TKO due to elbows, and becomes the fastest fighter to eclipse or to get 2 belts into different divisions. Now I want to go back to last week. We talked some keys to victory. And you know what, John Morgan? We did it again. Leg kicks and staying disciplined. No wild punches.
The man did it. They did it. We saw the path to victory. And it was funny because we saw the path to victory. We knew what was going to be the key for him. I still walked into last week thinking, yeah, but Jiri's so dynamic. He's so wild and crazy, and he's going to force the issue. He's going to draw Alex Pereira out of that shell. And he wasn't able to do that, right? And it was funny. During the course of the week, I started wondering, am I right? Am I right? But I still went into the night thinking Jiri was the pick, but Alex just executed perfectly. The game plan that we said was going to be the one that would be likely most effective, clearly the one that his team saw as well. Glover Teixeira in the corner, the wily veteran there. Clearly they saw the same path to victory that we did. And, man, he just executed on it perfectly.
See what I'm doing here?
Pat away, my man. Pat away.
No, and one of the things that we touched on that we thought may have been harder to do than it actually really was is catching him on those switch stance and back and forth to then land that low leg kick. And really that we wanted that that's one of the things we said. And then we wanted Pereira was going to want to draw the strikes out of Jiri. And it looked like he did both of those really, really easily. And the one thing that he couldn't do was get wild and start swinging. And when we said last week, with Jiri's style, the way he's herky-jerking around, and he's going to be heavy. It's not a traditional Muay Thai, so he's going to be heavy on that front foot. I said, it's not going to take 5 like traditionally. It's going to take 1 or 2. And man, you saw it in that first leg kick. I believe it took him off his feet.
100%. Yeah. I mean, the power that was in there, you could see immediately it affected the way he was able to put weight on that leg and the hesitation that he had. I mean, the power that Alex Pereira is able to generate through those is incredible. And again, it's hard to land it because that target isn't there for very long because he is constantly switching stances. He is constantly moving in and out. He is constantly doing weird things with his head movement and this herky-jerky motion to kind of distract you from where he is. But Alex Pereira was able to just land right on early on with those leg kicks. I think that had an immediate impact. And the other thing I saw too, which was wild, is, and I think about it now in retrospect of staying disciplined, I thought Jiri Prochazka might be able to work in some takedowns as well. I mean, I don't think you really want to stand and trade with Pereira longer than you have to. Really wasn't able to do that. But there were a couple times where he got close that I thought Pereira could have thrown a big knee at him, to be honest with you, because the head was kind of leaning forward. He was kind of ducking in, and Pereira didn't do that. But I kind of wonder in retrospect now, was that part of staying disciplined as well? Like, hey, don't offer him that leg because if he grabs it, he might take you to the ground and this is going to be a different fight. So even if that shot is there, stay away from it so that you're not giving him that. But the discipline was there and he just waited for the right moment. And when you have the type of power that Pereira has, all you got to do is wait for that moment because if you land that big shot, it's going to have an effect.
Everybody talks about you take him down, he's a fish out of water. Jan's taking him down. Jiri's taking him down. Izzy's taking him down. His UFC debut, a D1 wrestler, took him down. He has gotten up from everybody. I think it's time to put a little bit of respect. I'm not saying at the amazing skilled chops that Pereira has, but his ability to stay calm, stay composed, be completely defensive and get the F up to where he can do his best work.
I agree with you. And, sometimes I think that if you play to your strengths, right? If you understand where the strengths of your game are, where the limitations of your game are, and you play to those, and you don't try to say, well, I've got to make sure I want to be better off my back. I want to have better submission skills off my back. No. We're at the elite level, we're at the highest level. You're not going to be able to catch up. There's too much of a difference. But if you can make sure you do exactly that, right? Stay calm. Stay disciplined. Don't give up anything while you're down there. If you find yourself in that position, just make sure you're not offering anything that's going to become an easy submission target, and then work your way back to the feet where you can do your magic. Let's do that. And it seems like what he's done and what his team has done is, hey, we know who we are as a fighter. We know what got us to the dance. Let's make sure we refine that to the point that, our weapons are there at all times. And I think that's what he's done. And it is incredible to me, man. You talk about, I was just sending this out earlier this morning, man. You talk about those top 3 gates in MSG history, and he was in 2 of them. And that's amazing. Listen, and you may say it's an argument. Well, the first time he was the B side against Adesanya, so I don't know if you can really give him credit for that. And then right away, people said, yeah, but this was supposed to be Jon Jones and Stipe Miocic, so you can't really give him credit for that. No, I think you can give him credit for that. For what this man has done in 7 fights in the UFC, in 2 years on the UFC roster, what he's been able to, accomplish in the positions that he's been able to put himself in his career, spectacular, man. Nothing short of amazing. This is one of the most unique careers we've ever seen in UFC history.
9 fights to become a 2-division world champion. That's amazing. Now you say, I'll give people their credit or this, that, and the other. This is the only thing I need to point to, whether he has drawing power or not, right? And whether we can, maybe there is something to be said. He was the B-side. There is something to be said to it. There is something to be said that this was probably a pre-sellout. But these pay-per-view numbers, I'm sure, are going to be massive. And here's my point that I'm making in all this. When the announcers shut their mouths when you're walking to the octagon, so because they want everybody to see this, that's when you know you are a big deal. They shut their mouth. And they want that to resonate. That's how you know they're a big deal. They shut their mouth when Connor's walking to the cage. They shut their mouth when Pereira's walking to the cage.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, man, it was an eye-opener for me this week in New York as well. Just, how big the crowd came alive for every time that he was on the screen or every time that he was involved in something, whether it be the ceremonial weigh-ins. Unfortunately, we didn't get a crowd at the press conference, so we didn't get to sense it then. But the ceremonial weigh-ins, the fights, you've been to a UFC event, they'll show the intro early on and there'll be a couple interviews, and you can kind of hear the pop of the crowd because people will go crazy when they see their favorite fighter come on the screen. And then later during the main card, they'll show those headliners arriving into the building, and the crowd will go crazy when they see the guy that they're cheering for. And he was getting the biggest pop of the night. There's no question about it. It's amazing to me to see what a popular figure this guy has become. And it's wild, right? Because, doesn't speak English, right? So, but through his social media, through this, him embracing the fact that he's got this stone cold face, doesn't have any expression. I think it's the total package, right? And it's such a unique thing for fighters to see that, you don't have to try to be Conor McGregor out. There is only one Conor McGregor, but what you can do is just be you, be who you are, and that can resonate with people. And he really has both his fighting style and his personality have really resonated with fans. And this guy's an absolute star now.
When he stands stoic, when he gets into the octagon, he doesn't pace back and forth. He doesn't try to continue his warm-up. He doesn't try to do anything. He stands stoic. And then Jiri got in the cage.
I was going to say, please, we got to talk about that face-off. That was one of the most unique face-offs I've ever seen.
I'm telling you, very few times that I've ever seen people manufacture energy without saying or doing anything. That was one of those times. You look at pro wrestlers, they almost do this, but they do it as a choreograph together. They'll stand there, they'll stare at each other, and then they'll both look at the crowd like a different direction. And then you just feel like the crowd coming alive. You know what I mean?
Of course.
Think Hogan, Andre, back in the day, Hulk Hogan, The Rock. right? They both did that. They looked both ways, and the crowd just comes alive. They never took their eyes off each other here, him and Jiri. And Yuri's meditating while doing it, but without taking his eyes off of him.
Amazing. It was one of,
is standing there just.
Yeah, he was matching that energy, right? Pereira was doing what he does, and Prochazka was matching that energy and trying to do the same thing back to him, right? The stone cold, ice in the veins, stare right at you, and it's like, it's a couple alpha males that they're looking into each other's eyes. They're trying to sense that little touch of weakness, right? Like, who's gonna blink first? Who's gonna look away first? Because I'm looking right into your soul, and I know you're trying to look into mine, man. It was super cool. One of those little subtle moments, man, that that you just picked up on that kind of gave you those little goosebumps, right? The hair on your arm stands up where you're just like, oh, they're about to go at it.
Man, and there's really not a lot to break down in this fight. Leg kicks led to everything.
Yeah.
And we didn't really get to see Jiri be Jiri because he took one early and it completely changed his style. He had to go his goofy side front leg first because he was so banged up on it. He didn't have that explosion in and out. Now, I do give him credit. He knew he was compromised, and so he tried to pressure and close the distance. And that was the opportunity and the opening that Alex Pereira needed.
And I think that's what Pereira realizes, right? Is that, and listen, Adesanya, the movement that Adesanya has, I wouldn't say it's necessarily similar to Prochazka, but in terms of being a very mobile fighter and attacking from multiple angles, he's had plenty of that experience, right? And I think he realizes you're going to have to come engage me at some point. I don't need to overreach and outstretch and try to make this happen because at some point you're going to have to come to me and engage if you want to try to win. And at that moment, I believe in my shots enough that I know that I'll catch you at some point in those exchanges, and that's what he did here. And I'll be honest with you, I'm interested with your thoughts on the finish. Right? There's a lot of talk, positive and negative, and good and bad about it. Is it controversial? Is it not? I know that there's some limitations in how much you can weigh in, but I am curious what you saw in terms of the visuals because I've even gone back and forth on the finish, if I'm being honest. I'm watching it live, and I thought, oh, no, did we make a mistake here? But then I go back and I watch the replays, and I think we got it right. So I'm curious what your take was, maybe live and in review.
Live, I jumped out of my seat, and I said, no! I'm not going to lie. Yep. Live, I did. And really not necessarily, it was because who it was. Like Mark Goddard, I think he's a phenomenal referee, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
But we had the O'Malley Sterling controversy. Earlier this summer, no controversy there, in my opinion, and I detailed it here why. Mark Goddard did the right thing in that fight, and Aljamain, whether he was hurt or not, did the wrong thing. He turned his back. That's rule number one. Boom, done. Fight's over after 25 unanswered blows, by the way. So no controversy there, in my opinion. This is a little bit different. And here's why I'm going to say there's a little bit of controversy, but ultimately Mark Goddard was there. He saw it firsthand. Jiri reiterated the fact. And here's how I would have liked to see it be a little bit different, but no fault on Mark Goddard. What's rule number one?
Fighter safety.
Protect the fighter.
Yep.
So, from an optic standpoint, could he have taken one or two shots on top? Yes, that would have taken every bit of controversy out of it. And that's the only thing maybe I would have liked to have seen. One shot when he was laying on his back, just one. Outside of that, it was a perfect stoppage. Jiri confirmed it. And listen, if you've never been elbowed to your temple 8 times repeatedly,
yeah,
shut your mouth. Let's start there.
Yeah, I agree. Like I said, it's funny because I had the exact same reaction. Live, I thought, uh-oh, man, we made a mistake. I'm watching from Cageside, and I thought, oh, no, he stepped in just a touch too early, right? But then Prochazka doesn't really get up and start protesting. He's still a little bit like, oh, hey, is at the end of the round? What's going on here? I don't think he knew exactly where he was, right? And then Prochazka, and all credit to him as a martial artist and just as a man to come out and say, Mark Goddard was right. I mean, man, for the fighter to do that, because it'd be really easy for the fighter to say, hey, I don't want to bad talk the referee, but I think maybe he took me out, but no, he said, no, Mark Goddard was right. And so I respect Prochazka as a man, as a martial artist for doing that. But in watching the replays again, it did look like he was pretty out of it. And he took some bad shots. He took some shots on the feet. He took some nasty ones on the ground. Even what kind of looked like a takedown defense, Pereira afterward was like, no, he kind of just fell into my legs, to be honest with you. It wasn't really a shot. He just kind of fell over onto me. And as I know that you can attest, I have a pretty good seat. And there's a lot of times, depending on exactly where the fighters' bodies are positioned, I have a really good look into their eyes. And it's something that you can describe better. The referee obviously has the best view of all right on top of it. You can see those moments when you're that close to a person. You can see the moment that they check out, man. It's just there's no light behind that eyes anymore. And Mark Goddard was right on top of it. He is one of the best officials in the game. I know he's caught some criticism for some of the decisions he's made, including this one, but I'm telling you, he's one of the best in the game. His positioning is always spot on. He knows exactly what he's looking for. He's a lifelong martial artist who has experience fighting himself. He's a black belt himself. I mean, he knows what to look for. It's not as if he's just, I don't know, we got to make a stoppage. Like, no, he knows for the signs of the body positioning, of, again, that glassy eyes, that sort of thing, to make a decision like that. So ultimately, I did kind of walk away saying, no, I think the right call was made.
The right call was made. The optics and the positioning of the fighters is what was wrong in the situation, right? The optics there. Listen, people don't understand the generation of power that these are going to have. Even on a weekend, even if your opponent isn't weakened, we've seen people get knocked out by diving in on a takedown against the cage and the one fighter just repeatedly throwing elbows. Now, combine that with him falling into that position by taking a huge left hook that knocked him senseless. Okay? Yep. So by people thinking you're going in and really trying for this takedown, it really wasn't the case there. Okay? Yep. So the problem is when he fell back, his hands were still around his legs. So it almost looked like he was trying to pull guard to a degree. Not the case. He went limp and fell backwards, and Pereira came down with him. Now, to take all controversy out of it, I would have liked to have seen him take one more shot. I'm going to take you guys behind. And not that I wanted him to take another shot. It's so we didn't have to talk about this.
It's just so it's definitive, right? Because I understand what you're saying. And it's such a fine line because, right, especially in big fights, UFC title fights, that's the pinnacle of the sport. UFC title fights are the pinnacle of the sport, right? And so when it's that, you want to make sure there isn't controversy. You want to make sure it is definitive, right? But as you said, go back to rule number one, fighter safety, right? That, hey, is that one or two extra shots for optics so there's no controversy worth potentially what could come along with those extra shots? Because let's not forget, this is a sport, but it's a combat sport, and people are putting their health and safety on the line when they're in there, and that's what the referee is really designed to be controlling in there.
100%. Now I want to take everybody, I'm going to pull the curtain back, right, a little bit. So when, especially in Las Vegas, because Jeff Mullen does a great job of bringing everybody together and talking about things. And let's go back to, I forgot what card it was, but I think it may have been UFC Noche on one of the fights. Who was it? Chris Tione said the opponent was unconscious. Then right when he pulled the other person off, he was like, what's up? Right? I still think the fighter was unconscious. Like,
I too.
Cannot convince me he wasn't. All the indicators, all the markers, Tione went through the complete checklist. He did everything right. And then there was all this controversy. So, the following week at a UFC card, I was actually there, and we brought it up, and because we'll all get together and we'll talk with the commission, and we said, well, what do you think? Now, there's a difference between a blood choke, right, and punches, okay? So in that situation, the only thing that could have happened more was like, let's raise the arm and let it drop again, and just to show everybody. Right? It's the only thing that could have been done. And it really ultimately wouldn't have hurt the overall health of the fighter because a blood choke is different than taking repeated bashes to the head, right?
Yep.
So I say that maybe he could have taken one, but that wasn't the health. I don't know. I don't think the health, the risk reward on his health is worth it there. After a massive hook, and the hook ain't coming from, no offense to Dominic Cruz, it ain't coming from like a bantamweight or a featherweight, right? It's coming from Alex Pereira.
One of the scariest dudes in the game.
Then the elbows came from him. What? I can't even remember. 5, 6, 7. Bam, 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 bam. Knocks him unconscious. He falls back. Are you willing to let him take one more for all controversy? I would have liked to seen him hit that definitiveness of it, but maybe I would have let him take one more. But I didn't see his eyes. To your point, you see the fighter goes from like even if he's not completely unconscious, he is. Lights are on. That's why they say the lights are on, but nobody is home. You can literally watch their face expressions change.
You really can when you're right on top of the action like that. And it's wild, too, because as you can certainly attest as well, sometimes it's crazy. A fighter will do that, and then 2 more punches will land, and now they're back at it again. They'll actually get, quote-unquote, woken back up by shots, but they were still knocked unconscious for a moment, so the stoppage is clearly justified in that moment. But, yeah, I just wanted to point that out because I just want people to remember what they're saying. When they say, I wish you just let him take a few extra punches. I get it. We get it. You and I, in our roles, are still fans of the sport. And so we understand exactly what you're saying. We don't want the controversy to be there. But understand what you're saying when you say, I just wanted him to take a few extra punches. There is, real costs in this game as well for everybody that steps in there. And we're trying to prevent the ultimate cost. You know what I mean? So it's like you got to be very conscientious of what you're saying when you mention that. And for the record, real quick, you were right. It was Noche USC. I did pull that up real quick. It was the Daniel Lacerda Edgar Chairez fight. Certainly, we talked about it because there was controversy. I was sitting right there as well with that submission with Chris Tione. I was right there on that side. I thought he made the right call. It just goes to show you, man, your point of view and what you're seeing. It is a judgment call sometimes.
And to go back to that, I remember fighter, show me something, move. All he's got to do is a thumbs up or fight the choke a little bit. He didn't. Then he grabs his arm and you watch it fall. Guess what? He watched the submission get in there. He verbalized it to the fighter and then he checked with the fighter and the fighter didn't respond to any 3. Yes, Tione has to call the fight at that point and then you complain and then the fans get in there. And so maybe if you were to, instead of maybe just touch it once, you wiggle it and wiggle it. Like you'll watch me when I fight, I'll grab and I'll wiggle. Wiggle. Okay, we're good. Because it's really, I've been mistaken too, where I jump in right away. But I'm okay. And I'm like, well, I asked you if you're okay and you didn't do anything. And I touched you. And he's like, well, I was limping. That's not what Tione did the right thing in that fight. Goddard did the right thing in this fight. Optics on both look bad from those who really might not know what the heck they're talking about.
Yeah, 100%. You said it right, man. Sometimes the athlete might not realize that's the referee touching him, right? There's a lot of contact going in, a lot of points of your body when you're in there grappling. You don't realize that's who it is. I did see, not to talk too much about the Tione because it's old, but I love the people that were after that were bringing in the pro wrestling aspect of like everybody knows you got to lift it 3 times before he's out. You know what I mean? Like no. I agree here, man. Boy, it just goes to show, as you are also well aware, what a thankless job being a mixed martial arts referee can be, and it's frustrating, right? Because it's one of the only jobs, even as an official in sports, where it's like the only call you really have to make throughout the night is whether the fight is over or not, right? There's no makeup calls of like, well, we screwed up that charging call, so next time we'll make that sure that's a blocking down on the other end, or if it's football, that definitely wasn't pass interference, so we'll call it defensive holding or something. It's just all kinds of crazy stuff. There are no makeup calls in MMA, but yeah, it is wild. Watching this live, I was concerned, but watching it back, I think Mark Goddard made the right call. And I think he's taking a lot of undue criticism, if I'm being honest. That dude's a great referee, man.
I haven't been in a fighter meeting with Goddard, right? I've actually never met Mark Goddard. He lives over the pond. And so, he's doing mostly either East Coast shows or internationals. But I've been in fighter meetings with, outside of him, all of the best. There's one recurring theme. When these fighter meetings, we don't say a lot to fighters. We expect them to know the rules, right? Governed by mixed martial arts rules, and we'll go over kind of how we talk. And most of the fighters will say, hey, listen, if you're caught in a submission or if you're hurt, I'm going to verbalize it for you. Fighter move, fighter improve your position. If you don't, especially in a submission, if I don't see you, maybe I might grab, just give me a little something back and I know we're okay. So I say that to say this. One, Tione did all that. He was right. Went through the checklist. Number two is, in this case, Mark Goddard, I couldn't tell. I would assume he'd be like fighter, fighter, fighter. There was some sort of verbalization to a degree. Maybe we can't hear it. It's loud as hell in there. And so it's not up to him necessarily. If you go through the checklist, A, B, C, and D, bing, bang, boom, and none of them resonate with a fighter, you leave the referee no choice.
That's right. Even if it turns out that you were completely conscious, but you just weren't responding. If you were in a face down position where you couldn't be evaluated or whatever the case may be, you're absolutely right.
Or if you're falling backwards.
Yeah, 100%. At that point, you got to take it on yourself. You really do.
Yeah. So, and it may be like if he's saying fighter, you got to move, you got to protect yourself. Falling backwards, limping is not intelligently defending yourself. So
that's it. Hey, look,
no controversy. Optics are bad. Optics are bad. And it was really from the positioning of the fighters that Martin Goddard had no control over. I think it was a good stoppage. Most importantly, Jiri thinks it was a good stoppage. Let's stop the controversy talk.
I agree. And listen, maybe they'll meet down the line and they can revisit this. I mean, these two guys are clearly going to be at the top of the division for a while, so maybe their paths will connect. Some interesting times at light heavyweight, some interesting times at heavyweight, man. The matchups that we have to come over the next few months, I'm intrigued to see the way it all plays out.
Now, here's the real interesting thing. You said, what's up next? Light heavyweight. Obviously, we got a new champion. The one person he calls out, not the former champion who had to vacate due to injury. He calls out Izzy in epic fashion, by the way, right? If you knew this story when they started translating it, you knew it's like, I know exactly what he's talking about. But this probably educated a lot of people on why he even came into MMA to begin with. And now he's saying, if you're going to take a couple years off, that's a waste of talent. I'm going to motivate you to come back. Hey, Izzy, who's your daddy? I thought it was like, and so let's take John, I'm not going to ask what you think the UFC's opinion is here. I'm not asking you Uncle Dana's opinion. I'm asking John Morgan's opinion. If Izzy says, all right, because we already know he posted Elsa, right? Sleeping. So if Izzy says, all right, give me 8 months, me and you, 4th of July weekend card, light heavyweight title on the line. Does the UFC make that fight?
Oh, man, that's such a phenomenal question, right? Because there's so many things at play here. I mean, number one, you got Jamahal Hill, right? He's the former champ that gave up his title. That's right. Got the injury, right? So he had to give it up. But he got the title shot because Jiri Prochazka had to give up the belt, and then there was a draw. So it's like, he had some fortunate circumstances go his way, but he still won the title. But man, that's big money, right? The rivalry between Adesanya and Pereira, that's big money. They have shown that when they come together, people care about it. People want to see that happen. And Adesanya was the one doing all the selling of it beforehand. And now Pereira's gotten into marketing a little bit too. Let me tell you, come to daddy. You know what I mean? Like now he's throwing it out there. So, listen, you do have to factor in as well that Adesanya has said he's going to take some time off. I do think that, he said this quote 2027. He said that in kind of a joking fashion. I've been surprised how many people have really put that, real credence on that quote.
He did say you're not going to see me for a while.
But he did say you're not going to see me for a while. And I think that's good. I think he was incredibly busy. I think it's been mentally taxing on him. I think it's been physically taxing on him. He's alluded to a couple of different times that, he's got some things going on with his health and his body that needs to get taken care of. So I will say this. I don't think he's going to be ready to go in the summertime. And so because of that, I think Jamahal Hill is going to get this fight next. However, if Israel Adesanya has a change of heart tomorrow and says, yeah, I'm back in the game. You got me off the bar stool. The same way I took you out of the bar, when you got me out of my couch at home, I'm ready to go. I hate to say it because I feel so bad for Jamahal Hill. I don't think he deserves to get overlooked in this situation. I think a lot of people are trying to push him to the side too quickly. But we're talking about dollars and cents here. What do I always talk about when we get together? That's it. It don't make sense. And so this is one of the biggest rivalries the UFC has. And because it's one of the biggest rivalries the UFC has, there would be history on it. Look, it's such a big topic that I actually asked in the pre-fight press conference. I'm like, Alex, You chased Adesanya for years. Are you expecting him to eventually chase you up to 205? And he played it coy ahead of time. He was like, I don't know. He said he wants some time off. So, I'm not even thinking about that right now. Clearly, he was thinking about it. He was just ready to get the win first and lay it out there. So, look, if Adesanya came back, I'll say this to answer your question. If Adesanya did say, I'm ready to go for summertime, 4th of July, International Fight Week, I think the UFC will be hard pressed not to make that fight, man. I think they'd be hard pressed not to make that fight. Now, if I'm saying who deserves the fight most right now, it's Jamahal Hill. In the same way that Jiri deserved it when he came back because he stepped aside. He willingly stepped aside. Jamahal did the same thing. He willingly stepped aside after he got the injury. He's the one that, if we're looking all from a meritocratic standpoint, like he's the one that deserves it. But we say it all the time. That's not the way the UFC necessarily does business. They're trying to put on the fights that people want to see. And if you have one of the biggest rivalries in the company right now, you'd be hard-pressed not to put that together.
At their marquee event.
You just would.
Hey, listen, UFC put us on the payroll. We just booked your International Fight Week card for you. Or at least your main event.
I'm telling you.
But I you know what, in a weird way, like you say he needs to take time off and he needs some, a health break. And yes. These guys are fighters. If you're going to tell me that Izzy sitting at home, that didn't resonate with him, I'm going to say you don't know fighters.
100%. It definitely did. When they see performances like that, they get excited, right? It makes them want to get back in there because they love that moment. I mean, that's what gets their adrenaline flowing. Not only is it, the big paydays that come along with it, but like that's what drives them. It's those moments. It's being in the spotlight. It's being at Madison Square Garden. It's having all that, those opportunities. So yeah, I know look, I believe Israel does need a break. You look at the schedule that he kept, man. It was one of the most active champions in the UFC, period. I think he does need that kind of break mentally and physically. But yeah, you're darn right. When he saw that, it made him think a little bit like, well, maybe we get back in there.
All right, let's go ahead and move on to the co-main event. It's hard to even say that this was a co-main event. It was just not the last fight on the card. Let's say that.
Yep.
Tom Aspinall, TKO Sergei Pavlovich at 1 minute and 9 seconds of the very first round. Amazing. Not much to break down here, but I will say Aspinall took a heavy shot from Sergei in the first exchange. May have knocked his mouthpiece loose, but it didn't knock him backwards.
Yeah, it's funny. Like going into this fight, I just did not see any way this thing got out of the first round, but I didn't expect it to barely get out of the first minute, right? I mean, but these two dudes, they're just quick, aggressive, powerful dudes. And Sergei had been on this incredible run where he was just knocking everybody out, right? And Aspinall, I said it when this matchup was announced. I said, hey, listen, I know it's not the fight we wanted to see, but I'm telling you, these two guys are the future of the division. This is going to be an amazing matchup. And it was. The tension was there. But as we were talking about it, talking to other journalists, talking to people around town, it's like, what do you think? Everybody wants to know, what do you think? And I'm like, man, I feel like Aspinall is the more dynamic fighter, but I just feel like Sergei is so powerful and so strong and, very athletic in his own right for his a behemoth as he is. Maybe not quite as quick as Aspinall, but not
thick everywhere.
Yes, he is, and he's not just he's not slow and just puddling along. I mean, he's actually got some speed to it. So yeah, when he clipped Aspinall early, I said, but Aspinall survived. It came back and landed a couple of his own shots and put it out quick. And I mean, just what a scene it was, man. I mean, the intensity of the fight, the way it unfolded. I mean, two dudes that big going at it for 69 seconds, pretty incredible. And then the emotion that unfolded from Tom Aspinall, the realization, I mean, literally, as soon as he lands the shot and it's waved off, and you can see him just clasp his face and go to the ground, and he's just blown away. And, I asked him about that afterwards. I'm like, what was going through your mind? He was like, man, it was just the whole journey here was flashing through my eyes in a single second, man. All the years from the time I was a little kid, training with my dad, saying that I wanted to be here, that this is what I was going to do. All those moments, the sacrifice, the work, the effort, it all came through. The moments where he thought he was going to have to quit this journey because he had a family and children and he wasn't making enough money to really support them. And so maybe you got to give up this crazy dream that you have to do this, but he stuck with it and he reached the pinnacle of it. And I mean, just what a story. What a moment. What a champion. What a champion, man. The guy the guy is incredible. If you weren't a Tom Aspinall fan before going into this weekend, I don't see how you aren't now, man. The guy is just everything you could ask for in a mixed martial artist.
So good. He is so good. And I think what is wild about this is that, to me, everybody was saying we are scared. To me, everybody's saying we are scared of Sergei's power. We're scared of Sergei power. Aspinall ate it right in the mouth. Now, it did pop his mouthpiece out, and all he did was like, all right, let's go again. And that's in this. And I got to say this because we see this. I mean, not a lot, but often enough. If that shot lands maybe just somewhere different, the tune we are saying it's so different. Because now let's take Aspinall's shot. Bonk. On the temple. I'm not even going to say Sergei was hurt. But when you take a shot like that or behind the ear, your equilibrium goes. And you just saw it's like, that stanky leg started happening. And it's unrecoverable from. You're 100% with it here. You're not hurt. You're not even rocked where you're like, oh, okay, you're not seeing stars. It's just like literally your body will not work.
Bizarre, right? I mean, we talk about a game of inches. It's not even a game of inches. It's a game of like millimeters, man, depending on exactly where the shot lands. And yeah, that's one of those ones, right? You talk about a guy having a good chin or whatever. Those equilibrium shots, it doesn't matter, like, how durable you are. It just throws you off. And there's nothing you can do. And you really can't get a sense of your orientation. And it leaves you wide open for additional shots. And Aspinall saw his moment and he seized it, man. He jumped right on it, got the finish, and spectacular. And I love the fact that Aspinall says, amazing. I mean, I was scared. I mean, I love he's just such an honest guy. He's like, I've never been more scared than I was ahead of this fight. This dude is a scary, big, bad dude. And guess what? Said, I know I'm going to see him again. I'm going to fight him again at some point because that dude, Sergei Pavlovich, is going to go knock out everybody else in the division, and I'm going to see him again. And I just love that, man. I respect. I don't know that I've ever heard Tom Aspinall say something that I wasn't like, man, spot on. Great observation. Great point. You know what I mean? The dude gets it. He gets the game.
You want to know why I have the utmost respect for Aspinall? Is one, you asked the question earlier in the week. I watched and listened. John, I'm shouting you out. You asked the best questions.
Oh, thank you,
right? Yeah, a lot of times, you have to take the opportunity, but is this even a smart opportunity to a degree? And he goes, well, you can't win the championship from on your couch.
I love that.
I love that question that you asked, and I love the response that he gave. But now I want to kind of piggy that back to his post-fight, to when you were interviewing him. Again, John Morgan asked the best questions, even though they let you get the first 35. So you take all the good ones.
Makes it easy. Makes it easier.
Right. But this is why I have respect for him. We're both family men, right? And he says, like, yeah, like I was at our weekend home with my family, and my wife, she's about this life. She understands and she supports me. And I had to get up. I've missed all these vacations in the year. Something like this always happened. And you know what? And she supports me being able to do this. Like that, like for a guy, I'm going to get on my damn soapbox here. For a guy who just won the championship of the world, who is now regarded, take Jon Jones, he's on the shelf, the baddest man on the planet. He's thanking his wife and saying, like, if it wasn't for her taking care of the family, I couldn't do this. You know what? Tom Aspinall, dude, you and Stipe now, 1A, 1B. Man, I love that. I can't express how much I love that.
It's true, and you get it because you're around it, but people that may not, live around this industry or the sport might not understand how selfish you have to be as a fighter to compete at the highest level, right? Like, it takes ultimate dedication. And if you have, it's one thing if you're just a single guy or whatever, like, yeah, no big deal, right? Just, train when you got to train, rest when you got to rest, all those things. But when you've got like a family to take care of as well, and you got, children to get off to school and to get ready and to take their activities after school, and, you've got a wife that wants to take a vacation, wants some time away, she wants, and they're all willing to sacrifice. They're all willing to say, don't worry, Dad, or don't worry, Mom, depending on the situation, male, female fighter. Hey, you go do that. You go chase that, because the window of opportunity to really be good at this is narrow, right? I mean, you can only cash in for so long. So it takes a family unit to get together and, hey, we realize for you to do this, you have to be selfish. You have to manage your time 100%. You have to go to all the training sessions you have to be at. You have to rest when it's time for your body to recover. You can't take part in all these things. We can't necessarily do that. And for everybody to be on the same page and say, yes, let's accomplish this dream together, man. Let's better our family together. It's a beautiful thing. And especially if that athlete in return turns around and realizes it and doesn't just say, hey, I got here by myself. You know what I mean? I was a super talent and I made all the right moves. No. Everybody around you made the right moves as well. And yeah, like I said, if you weren't a fan of Tom Aspinall, if this was your first exposure to Tom Aspinall, man, hope you like what you saw, because you saw the true character of that man. And I think he made a lot of fans moving forward.
And to come to find out, he came into it with a back injury.
Unbelievable. Yeah. Said, look, I took the fight and then realized I wasn't really going to be able to train for it because I had a back injury. I even asked him that. I'm like, was there any, listen, it's great to have self-confidence. As you said, I loved that quote earlier in the week where he was like, yeah, this was not the best circumstances, but I knew I couldn't win the fight sitting on my couch at home. I'm like, hell yeah, take those chances. When the opportunities are there for you in life, go after them, man. Even if they seem a little scary, even if they seem a little intimidating, even if the circumstances don't seem exactly right, go do it, right? But then post-fight, I asked him, I was like, all right, now, I know you believe in yourself. I know you said take chances, but was there any part along the way where you sat back and be like, this is stupid? Like, what are we doing? And he was like, yep, sure did. Sat in the locker room today. And I was like, this is stupid. Like, why am I here right now? Like, what am I doing? And that's what, to me, man, that's what's so great about this sport, man, because as badass as these men and women are, every single one of them sits in the locker room the day of the fight and goes, the hell am I doing this for, dude? Like, I'm about to go out there. The nerves set in. You get a little bit scared. You're just living in this headspace that you have. And then you have to get it all together, right? I think of George St. Pierre that used to have that quote, right? You have the butterflies in your stomach, but you get the butterflies to fly in formation, and you get them to work the way you want, and you overcome that. You overcome the fear. You overcome the nerves. You overcome the anxiety, and you get out there and you go perform. And he changed his life on Saturday night, man. He changed his life. And again, as he said, his entire family worked together to make that happen. I love it. I'm excited to see what's next. You and I talked about it last week, and I'll be honest with you.
And you asked
you were the one that kind of got me thinking, like, this is about to be a mess, right? And now I said, dude, this is going to be a damn mess right now, man. I just don't see how Tom Aspinall, who is now your interim heavyweight champion, sits on the sidelines the whole time and waits for this Jon Jones versus Stipe Miocic fight to happen, which Dana White says, no, that's still the fight we're going to do, but we don't know when it's going to happen. I think
a minimum of 9 months until he's healed.
That's right. And so we don't, and then that is, I don't get it, man. I'll be honest with you. I think Aspinall is going to have to defend this title, whether it be against Cyril Gane, whether it be against Curtis Blades, the fight that we wanted to see but didn't get to see because of the injury, which that might be a perfect fight to make. Even if you don't think this, Cyril Gane's the higher ranked contender right now.
That's not a good fight for Cyril.
It's not a good fight for Cyril, I don't think either. Curtis Blades, I think, is the most challenging fight for Tom Aspinall in the division. But I wonder if that might be the fight to make, not only because it's the most challenging, but also because it's a little bit of a poetic storytelling there, right? You know what I mean? Like, that was the big moment where it was supposed to be his breakout fight, and he has this immediate knee injury. He's on the shelf for a year. We don't get to see the fight we thought we were going to get to see. So maybe you put that one back together as the fight that we were wanted to see anyway, and you make that as a defense of the interim title. I don't know. There's options on the table for sure.
Well, you definitely had Stipe in the crowd wearing his awesome turtleneck.
Looking sharp. Looking
sharp with the turtleneck, throwing it back to the late 90s in the Rock. I love it. But yes, to answer your question, Stipe is not interested in titles.
Right.
He's not. He wants the Jon Jones fight, and he said that. The only thing I'm focusing on Jones. Like, I don't care about anything else. And in my opinion, he's riding off into retirement. Rightfully so, as the greatest heavyweight champion of all time. Then number two is you got Jon Jones here. He's so far. We are so far from that fight becoming a reality right now. The timetable is he needs 9 months of recovery time. That's recovery time. That's not training camp included, right? So now we're going to add another, 8 weeks on top of that. So what? We're at basically a year Then they have a fight. Then we have recovery time. And then what? We're going to need at least another, 3, 4, 5 months to build that fight, get a date, find a location. They're going to build a whole card around that fight if it ever comes to fruition. He's going to have to fight again. There's no way he's going to sit on the shelf for a year and a half waiting for that. He's in the prime of his career, his money-making prime of his career. It is a mess, but I understand why it happened because Dana says, I need to solve this problem first before I can solve anyone else. Put him on. Shut up. Ask me Monday. Don't ask me today. Ask me Monday. And now it's Monday, and we're asking you what?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think you laid that scenario out perfectly. I mean, look, ideally, if Jon could rush his recovery, which I don't think he's going to rush his recovery, we know Jon Jones likes, he's done enough in his career that he wants the circumstances to be one that he's comfortable with, right? Ideally, summertime where, International Fight Week, that'd be a massive headliner. I don't believe he's going to be ready by then. So at that point, if you're not doing summertime in July, I think you immediately move it to Madison Square Garden. Maybe there's usually a pay-per-view in like Abu Dhabi in the late summer, and that's big, right? Abu Dhabi's big, and that's your business partners over there. But this is the greatest of all time against the greatest heavyweight of all time, right? You don't just put this on any random pay-per-view. Like, this has to be your marquee events. And I know every UFC pay-per-view is, a marquee event, but there's marquee events within marquee events, right? And so if you're not doing International Fight Week in July, immediately I'm looking right back to Madison Square Garden in November, right? Where you can have those massive gate revenues that we talked about to start off. And now you don't do 1, 2, and 3. Now you're 1, 2, 3, and 4 in Madison Square Garden history. So now we're talking about a year from now. And Tom Aspinall said it directly, said, I'm not going to wait a year. I'm not going to wait a year. That's too long. And he shouldn't. I mean, now his earning potential is higher than it's ever been. He's in the spot. He wants to fight Jon Jones. And I love the fact that he said it very respectfully. Again, there's nothing not to like about.
The ultimate goal is to fight Jon Jones.
It's amazing. There's nothing not to like about Tom Aspinall, right? He said, I have all the respect for that guy in the world, but it's my dream fight. Please give me that opportunity to fight my dream fight. I think to get that dream fight, he's going to have to fight in between. So I think what we see, if I'm just kind of starting to look into the Zuffa crystal ball there, right there, is I think we do see an interim title defense before we see Jon and Stipe. I think we see Jon and Stipe next year at Madison Square Garden. I know that's a long way away, but I just don't feel like Jon. I don't feel like Jon's going to be ready.
Jon, what are you killing me here?
I don't feel like he's going to. Maybe, I'm hoping. Let's knock on wood. Maybe he'll be ready for International Fight Week.
You're right.
I don't feel like he's going to be ready for International Fight Week. So I think we see it at Madison Square Garden. I think
Stipe's fine with that.
I think so too. I think he's just like, he doesn't care. He wants one fight, and that's about it, which will be crazy when you think about the amount of time he's going to have been away at that point and what he's going to be facing. It's wild. And then if Aspinall is victorious and Jones is victorious, then maybe we see it. I've said all along, I think Jon walks away after Stipe as well, but maybe this performance of knocking out the feared Russian, and maybe if Aspinall can go in there and have an interim title defense where he looks scintillating again, and all the media and all the fans are saying, wait a minute, wait. The greatest of all time, you beat Stipe. And look, it's going to be so easy to rewrite that history. If Jon Jones beats Stipe after 4 years on the sidelines, it's going to be real easy for everybody to go, come on, man. You beat the greatest of all time, but like, how long had he been sitting out? The greatest heavyweight right now is Tom Aspinall. If you want that, you got to beat that guy. So it could happen.
You know what would be crazy? And I never thought about it till right now. Let's say he fights. Let's say that Stipe fight happens, and then he eventually fights Aspinall.
Right.
He would have taken out the past generation, the current generation, and has a potential to take out the future generation. Holy shit.
Amazing. And look, the dude has the ability to do that. Now, look, I mean, fantasy matchmaking, we're a couple fights away from it, but
we're a couple years, Jon.
Aspinall would be a handful for Jon.
Oh, my God.
I'm just going to be honest with you. I'll be 100% honest with you. The fight I want to see right now is Jon Jones versus Tom Aspinall. I want to see it. more than any other fight in the heavyweight division. No disrespect to Stipe Miocic. None whatsoever. I understand the legacy. I understand what this means. Again, I understand the marketing ahead of that, the greatest of all time versus the greatest heavyweight of all time. It's amazing. It's amazing. It's amazing. It'll be incredible. I'll be there. I'll be excited for it. But if you're asking me, if you're asking, that's it. I want to see Jon Jones versus Tom Aspinall right now.
As much as I love Stipe, that's what I said last week. Remember I said it and you're like, you better hope Stipe doesn't have your address. And I said, listen, Stipe Miocic is my for the exact reasons that I said I just loved Tom Aspinall, the exact reasons I said Stipe, family man, career oriented, does the right thing every single time. Utmost respect, favorite fighter in the UFC. We missed our window, man. We missed our window. If Aspinall does not get Jon Jones next, like let's just say, let's operate under the auspices that he does not get Jon Jones next. It is going to be absurd to say that the interim title, heavyweight champion is passed over for a title shot. Now, albeit probably well deserved for Stipe, but that is just a wild thing to say. The best heavyweight in the division right now, Tom Aspinall, the interim heavyweight champion of the world, does not deserve the first shot at the heavyweight champion.
The only way you get away with that is if the schedules don't line up, right? So if for whatever reason this back injury is worse than we thought and Aspinall needs a little more time off, or maybe he just wants some time off, to take the much needed vacation and with the family that he had promised, maybe he needs that. And if Jon Jones is ready to go, if he's ready to go for International Fight Week, but that's still 8 months from now. That's July. That's still 8 months from now. That's still a long time, right? So, all right. Maybe Jon's ready to go, and you put Jon versus Stipe as the headliner of International Fight Week 8 months from now. The co-main event is the interim heavyweight champion, Tom Aspinall, facing, I still say Curtis Blaydes because it's the fight that got away. So maybe
it's the only fight to make.
That's the one to make. So you make that fight. That's your main and your co-main. And then if something weird happens, if somebody, pulls up, there's not, there's an injury, there's a whatever the case may be, at least you've got all four, big names involved there. I know Cyril Gahn would like to be involved in that, and maybe Cyril Gahn comes in and trains as the backup. Now you got 5 names to work with, right? Now you got 5 names to work with, and somehow out of that, you get something pretty spectacular.
And you get a great winner face off inside the cage.
That's it. Because you can't. I just can't see Tom Aspinall waiting to even book something to see what happens with Jon and Stipe, right? Because if Jon wins or Stipe wins, Stipe wins, we're pretty sure he's retiring, right? That just seems almost certain at this point. Jon, I'm still not convinced he won't retire as well. But even if Jon doesn't retire, he tried to make a quick turnaround this time around. It didn't work out so well. So if Jon wins in the summer, is he going to be ready to go for December? And even if he's ready to go for December or Madison Square Garden, again, November, Madison Square Garden, December, Las Vegas, is Aspinall going to want to wait that long? He already said, I don't want to wait a year. So I think the only way you can do both is to put them both on the same card in International Fight Week if Jon is ready.
A lot of ifs, a lot of crazy scenario. This is a mess to get through. What is not a mess is how good Tom Aspinall really is. He is amazing. We're kind of running a little short on time. We could go down the card because there was another amazing fights that I would love to talk about. But I think outside of those two, the next biggest move that we only have a couple of the next biggest news that we only have a minute or two to talk about is Usman Nurmagomedov is now suspended by the California State Athletic Commission. It is overturned to a no contest for testing positive for a banned substance. Now, what we know that you could probably talk to this better, but what we do know is he did not get a testosterone exemption in Bellator. Now, side note, Bellator doesn't use ASADA, so you can get those exemptions. but he didn't get one. But they're not saying what the substance was, but they're also saying and he didn't get a testosterone use exemption. So
therapeutic use exemption. I'll make sure you get that right because he didn't necessarily say, not testosterone because that would infer the use of testosterone. He did not get a therapeutic use extension, TUE, exactly right.
Let's read between the lines, right? So they're not saying what the substance was, but this is massive. In my opinion, it's being kind of like overshadowed a little bit, but I think this is massive news. Usman Nurmagomedov. Now, does he get his title pulled from him? Does he I don't know. Talk me through this.
Well, it's weird. Here's what's making it. There's a couple things that are making us determine whether this is really massive news or not. First of all, I would say when you're talking about reading in between the lines, look at the length of the suspension from California. 6 months. 6 months is usually kind of an administrative type thing, right? Fighters, especially at the highest level, only fight, every 6 months anyway. Maybe some a little bit more. Every 4 to 5. Can I ask
one question before you keep going?
Correct. You can.
Therapeutic use exemption usually applies to what?
Well, anything. It can be anything, but usually some type of performance enhancer. You're right.
But usually testosterone replacement, right?
It can. Well, I mean, that's where it first gained the most notoriety in the first knowledge, right? Because that's what, but not necessarily. It may be, it can be for things like ADHD medication, or it can be for it can be for any prescription medication whatsoever. And they're contending that it was a prescription medication that was given to him by a doctor that he didn't realize was also a banned substance. So it can really be for anything whatsoever.
So my reading between the lines is not accurate here. Or
that's what I would say.
Potentially not accurate.
Potentially. And that's what I would say the 6 months is the important thing, because you can use that to generally see where people think, the severity of the infraction was. Because normally that would come with an infraction. A drug failure would normally come with a result of a 2-year suspension, right? Now, sometimes you'll see the commission, they'll knock it down to maybe like a year or 9 months if they say, well, the fighter worked with us tremendously on this. He was more than open. There was a mistake made. This was ingested incorrectly, whatever the case may be. When you knock it down to 6 months, at that point, you're almost talking about something that, would seem like an administrative failure that wasn't done. It was prescription medication. I will say it's a little bit bizarre that they're not releasing the substance. That makes me wonder if potentially it's something maybe a little bit embarrassing, or maybe that it's a substance that's only used for a very particular condition that would immediately identify what that condition is, because, medical privacy is something. Because I don't understand, especially with California and Andy Foster, who is, one of the guys leading the charge in trying to make this sport fair and trying to move it forward, and really a stand-up individual. For him, he wouldn't want to keep this thing private if there was a reason to. So I wonder about that. But I don't think it is a big deal in terms of he's no longer in the Grand Prix. Bellator said they're not going to strip him of his title. I think the other thing that's preventing people from figuring out how big of a deal it is we don't even know what's happening with Bellator, right? We keep thinking they're going to fold into PFL, but we don't know exactly will the Grand Prix even be finished? I don't know. I don't think anybody can say with any certainty that the Grand Prix is going to be continued. Bellator officials did come out and say they won't strip him, but yeah, it's a big deal. And here's the thing: it's unfortunate because people are going to reference this forever. As long as this guy's at the top of the game, they're going to reference it, and they're going to call him a cheater, and they're going to say that he tested positive, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, with time, these things fade. But for me, reading between the lines, I would look at that 6 months order and say the commission didn't think it was that big of a deal if they knocked it all the way down to 6 months.
Look, I jumped the shark. I didn't even know it was 6 months. I just saw I just saw overturned out of the Grand Prix. That's kind of what I saw. I was so focused on the MSG UFC card this week, and then I missed that. But Usman Nurmagomedov. Now, I will say, it lends a lot of credence. What you were just saying lends a lot of credence to, what I know historically. Because let's go back to, I think you may even have commentated this fight. And he's fought in Tough and CFFC. Kevin Sweet Pea Peace got popped in Nevada for not disclosing something or a therapy use exemption, and it was an acne medication.
That's right. Exactly right. Yep. Same thing happened. And they came back. They said, you know what? Let's do 3 months. We got to suspend you for something, but very helpful. Has a positive finding. Says, look, here's everything I'm taking. Let me show you. Come test these substances, et cetera. And then they find traces of the substance he tested positive for in this medication. So exactly. I think that's a great correlation there between the two.
All right. Well, we hope for the best with Usman just because he's so damn fun to watch. He's so damn good. And I'm anxious to see what comes out of this. Man, this was a fun show. We had a lot to talk about. We only talked about 2 fights.
We could add a lot more.
We could have had a lot more. Man, it's crazy. Shout out Jessica Andrade, though, man.
Oh, amazing fight for her. Was bummed for Pat Sabatini, of course, CFSC vet. But
Diego Lopez, man.
I mean, 3 fights, 3 bonuses. I love stories like that. As bummed as I was for Pat Sabatini, seeing a guy, come in and change his life. 3 consecutive bonuses this past year. Unbelievable. How about Lupe Godinez? 4-0 on the year. That's incredible. What a year for her.
From May. Oh.
Unbelievable, man. Jared Gordon. How about Jared Gordon, gets the big finish over Mark Madsen and then gets on the mic and says, man, I used to shoot heroin in the train station, Penn Station below this arena, Madison Square Garden. Now I'm here fighting in Madison Square Garden, getting knockout wins. You can do anything in life, man. Don't ever let anybody tell you, no matter what your circumstances are, that you can't accomplish it. Look where I came from and look where I am. You can do the same. I mean, I love stories like that, man.
And I love talking about them every Monday with you right here on Cageside with Jon Morgan. What you got coming up this week?
Man, we're back to the Division I wrestling. I'm looking forward to it. So if you haven't checked it out, do so. CFFC Match Day on UFC Fight Pass. I'm not on the call for those, but I'm working on the production side of it, and I'm loving that aspect of it as well. But
that's the one in Wyoming, right?
Yeah, we got 2 of them this week. So on Friday, we'll be in Wyoming. It'll be on a wild horse preserve out there in the middle of nowhere, Wyoming. So that'll be that one. And then on Sunday, we'll actually be in Humboldt, Iowa, at a high school, a packed high school there. It's actually Kevin Dresser, the coach of Iowa State. It's actually where he graduated high school. So he's bringing his squad there. So 2 very, very unique locations. And, man, we're having fun, kind of bringing NCAA Division I wrestling to UFC Fight Pass.
That's awesome. I can't wait to watch it. I will tune in. UFC next week in the Apex Center leading up to the next pay-per-view, which is Leon Edwards versus Colby Chaos Covington. I think we're all looking forward to that. We have a lot of time to break that down. But anyways, for Jon Morgan, I'm Eric McMahon. We'll see you next week and enjoy the fights.